Hi everyone, Pam Gregory, astrologer. I'm going to be speaking to you today about the second half of December, which is really powerful, and the new SuperMoon that we have coming up in Capricorn on the 23rd. But before I get to the astrology, I would just again like to say a massive, massive thank you to all of you who've sent me healing. I've had so many emails, so much love. It's been really overwhelming, and apologies to those of you I just haven't been able to reply to. It just hasn't been humanly possible with the volume, but I felt all of the healing. And from 3 weeks ago, where I could scarcely walk across the room with 2 sticks, I'm now going for walks, short walks, slowly with a stick, but the pain is dramatically reduced. And I just, from the bottom of my heart, want to say a massive thank you. And it just shows what humanity can do when when we come together. And I'm always saying, trust the invisible. And of course, healing is invisible, but boy, have I felt it. So just thank you, thank you. And the injection I had, the effect of that won't really become apparent until January. So if it's possible for any of you to continue to send healing until the end of the month, I would be immensely grateful, because it really has changed my life. So thank you, thank you. Okay, now let's start to talk about the astrology. This second half of December is very powerful because of the solstice. So the energy is ramping up, and many of you can feel this. There's surges of high frequency energy coming in. They're more around the 12th, and very, very powerful surge of energy coming in around the solstice. I'm doing a separate video with David Farrell, specifically focused on the solstice. That will be out in a few days' time. But I'm hearing from spiritual people whose judgment I trust that the energy on the earth has never been higher than it is at the moment. And I profoundly believe that we are in the midst of the biggest evolutionary jump that humanity has ever made, despite what it looks like on the ground. And that's really our test of can we see what's going on the ground, which is so incredibly tough and distressing for so many people. And can we break that pattern of the hamster wheel of war, poverty, misery, disease? Can we break that pattern to shift our internal energy to get us out of that hamster wheel to a much better place? Because the energy is helping us immensely, particularly through December. It's incredibly strong. I think we're going to get another huge surge also in March. So it's going to be a big step up in consciousness, available for all of us, remember, not just the select few, available for all of us. And again, I believe that's going to be happening in March. So we're on a fast track. And that is available to everyone. And I think what is very helpful for us, if you I set intentions all day long to help me get through my crazily busy days. But remember, when you're setting intentions, always to keep them in the present tense. And if you set an intention, which is something like, I'm welcoming in an expanded consciousness of love. I am welcoming in an expanded consciousness of love. Choose your own words, keep it present tense, think expanded consciousness, think love. Because if we think love and we feel love, and not a pink, fluffy, romantic love, but love as a state of being, that can get us onto the highest timeline. So particularly around the solstice, that's going to be a great thing to do. And if you can take time out in nature, if you can meditate, if you can be with like-minded people, enjoy, any of those things will lift the energy to really jump on that incredible surge of high frequency energy. And what we're talking about here, and you don't have to be excited, you can be in peace. That's a high frequency energy. But because the earth is traveling through the photon belt for the next 2,000 years, and we're really just entering it now. And when we're entering it now, the energy is very turbulent, because the old is falling away, and that feels very chaotic, and the energy is kind of churning around. But it's lifting us to this very different place. And we are made up of biophotons. Our cells are made up of biophotons. And that's they are what carry the information from cell to cell. They are the intercellular network within our systems. But what we're receiving now are photons that can move in many more dimensions at the same time. So what's happening here is not only is the light more concentrated, and if we can embody that light, we are shifting ourselves from density into light body increasingly, but we are also being shifted to our multi-dimensional selves because the photons are able to move in several different dimensions at the same time. They've got a higher rate of spin. So, at the quantum level, this is incredibly exciting, and this is down to the cosmology, and you can check this out, Rory Duff's work. Dr. Carl Johan Kalaman also talks about this with the shifts of the ages. There are many people online talking about this, but bringing it back to the astrology, there is an increasing momentum that we have here through quite a few months of 2022. We had most of the planets retrograde, then Saturn went direct, Pluto went direct, and by the 22nd of January, Mercury, Mars, and Uranus will all be direct too. So that means that all of the planets will be moving direct, which is quite unusual, all of them, until May. I believe it's May when Pluto starts to retrograde back. So that creates, again, this forward momentum. So the other thing that's important to note before we look specifically at this new supermoon is that from the beginning of 2020, we had that very, very tough conjunction between Saturn and Pluto, and I talked about that ad infinitum. This was about contraction, about top-down control. Historically, it's been about the abuse of power, and astrologers didn't know the particular events of how that would manifest, but now we do. That was very clear. And that tough conjunction that ran all through 2020 and 2021. And then another very challenging aspect astrologically took over all through 2021 and 2022. And again, I've talked about this one ad infinitum. And this is the square, the 90-degree aspect between Saturn and Uranus. Saturn is the old world, Uranus is the new. Saturn is the way we've always done things. Uranus is breaking out of that. Saturn is government. It's top-down control. It's rules and regulations. It's for your safety. It's centralization. Uranus is decentralization. It's not going to obey the rules. It's going to break out and do its own individual things, and it's very related to the future and freedom. It's the planet of revolution, the planet of doing it my way, the maverick. It's also the planet of the galactic, actually. I think we're going to see a lot more about galactic contact also as we go into 2023. But nevertheless, that particular aspect has been dominant through 2021 and 2022. We've seen it incredibly clearly in revolutions, in protests, in demonstrations right across the world. They're not usually reported on mainstream media, but it's very clear in Iran, in Brazil, in the Netherlands right now, that the people are saying enough and standing their ground. But what is very interesting here, as well as this increased momentum of more planets are going to be starting to move direct by the end of January, all of them by 22nd of January, is that this square that's been so dominant between Saturn and Uranus is now breaking apart. By the end of December, it's going to be 7 degrees away from exactitude. That's really barely operational. And so, although things are very hard on the ground, very tough for many people in many places, what the astrology is saying is those struggles are now moving on. We are now moving on to a very different energy. And that gives me great cause for hope and optimism that the astrology is pointing to something very different as we move through the end of this year into next. And just also set an intention that these upgrades that you're going through will be smooth. Because if you think it's going to be difficult, it's more likely to be difficult. Set an intention that they will be smooth and easy. And if you do that, they will be smoother and easier than they otherwise would have been. Because if you think it's going to be tough, it will be tough. So let's now talk about the new supermoon that is coming up on the 23rd of December. So I'm going to share my screen at this point. So I've set this for London, England, as I always do. This is happening, as I say, on the 23rd of December. It's happening at 2:16 a.m. Pacific and 10:16 UK time, AM. So again, ignore the clock face, ignore the houses, just look at where the planets are falling and the aspects they're making to each other. So clearly, this is just a couple of days after the solstice, which also makes this supermoon even more powerful. And what it means as a supermoon is that the moon is much closer to the Earth in its orbit, and that strengthens the power of this new moon. It is also the second new moon in a series of 5 that is at 1 degree of its sign. And as I move through this update, there are many indicators of the new. The fact that the Saturn-Uranus square is starting to break up, the fact that by 22nd of January, all of the planets will be moving direct, by the fact that we have 5 new moons in a row, new moons and new beginnings, that are at 1 degree of their sign, the very beginning of their signs, again, indicators of new beginnings. And we've got some super clear indicators of new beginnings within this chart. See where 1 degree 32 of Capricorn falls in your chart. And don't forget to set a new intention for whatever you want to manifest at this time, to plant a new seed for in your life. If you don't know what I'm talking about, you can download a free birth chart from my website. Go to the link below, get a 2-part video series that will explain in detail everything you need to know, really, to help you get the meaning of every update I do for you in your life. And you can use that ad infinitum with all of these updates. So, first thing to note is that we have 5 planets here in Capricorn. We have the moon, the sun, always together, obviously, to a new moon. We have Venus, Mercury, and Pluto. That's a lot. That's half of the planets in that single sign of Capricorn. Now, Capricorn is about manifestation, and it's also about building for the long term. So there's going to be quite a strategic thinking about what do I want to build for the long term. And I think that's really appropriate for where we are headed. And what's interesting as well is that Mercury is at 21 degrees, 30 minutes of Capricorn. That's ever so close. It's just over a degree away from that really powerful Saturn-Pluto conjunction back in January 2020 that was at 22:45 of Capricorn, 22 degrees 45 minutes of Capricorn. So with these shifts in energy and shifts of perspective, Mercury, that we may be experiencing around this time, is that going to give us a whole new perspective on the events of the last 3 years that began in January 2020? Because I think it is. I think as we shift our consciousness upwards, it's going to give us a whole new perspective. And that will be extremely productive for where we are headed. We also have a very tight square here between the new moon, the sun and moon, and Jupiter. Jupiter at 0 of Aries. Now, it's even more tightly at 0 of Aries at the solstice just 2 days earlier. But as I say, I'm covering that in a separate video with David. But I always want to call this very first degree of the zodiac the creator degree. You know, it's the very first beginning. And it is remarkable that Jupiter is there at 0 of Aries. Now, Jupiter has a very reliable 12-year orbit. If you go back in your own life and see what was happening in June 2010 or January 2011, when Jupiter was last at 0 of Aries, try and remember what was happening then, because you tend to get a vortexing upwards, a spiraling upwards of whatever was manifesting 12 years ago for you, and you build on it at this point. Now, this is particularly strong for you if you have any, particularly the sun, the moon, your ascendant at really those first 2 or 3 degrees of Aries. This is going to be very powerful for you as a new beginning. If you have other planets there as well, particularly the personal planets, this will be very strong. But if you have your sun, moon, or ascendant in Aries, this whole period from now till May will actually be very positive for you, because what Jupiter tends to do is bring success, expansion, and recognition to wherever it falls in your chart. So see where those first few degrees of Aries falls in your chart, and just observe. Go back to 12 years ago, as I say, but observe what is unfolding then, because it usually brings some expansive gifts with it, some personal growth of some kind. It could be travel or study, or depending on where it's falling and what it's falling on. So be very aware, super positive. So it is remarkable, however, that it coincidentally is falling at this solstice and new supermoon at 0 degrees of Aries. Very much a signal, another signal for a new beginning. What is even more significant is that the dwarf planet Manwe, M-A-N-W-E, is also at the Aries point. Manwe here, dwarf planet, is at 29 degrees 33 minutes of Pisces. So it's within 27 minutes of being exact on this Aries point. It gets exact to that Aries point, that 0 degrees, at the end of January, because Manwe has a 289-year orbit. So this coincidence of Manwe and Jupiter on the Aries point at the solstice and at this new supermoon is very remarkable as signals for new Earth. Anything, remember, between 28 of the mutables and 2 degrees of the cardinals, that is considered conjunct the Aries point, conjunct the world axis for any of the 0 cardinal points, Aries, Cancer, Libra, Capricorn. So Manwe is one of the biggest symbols we have for new Earth. I've talked about Manwe before. Remember that in myth with his wife Vada, they created the cosmos. He is the highest archangel closest to the mind of God. He is the highest source of divine intelligence. I'm drawing very heavily here on the research of Kelly Hunter, and I'll put her website beneath this video. This is her research, which I'm sharing with you. He exists beyond the dimensions of time. Beyond the dimensions of time. He is dedicated to world renewal. He created the cosmos the first time around. He knows how to do it the second. And he is dedicated to the success, the winning, the triumph of light over dark. I find that incredibly significant in terms of where Manwe is sitting at the Aries point, at this point in time, at the solstice and the new supermoon. These are Kelly Hunter's words specifically here, and I'm quoting her, so I hope she won't mind. She refers to Manwe at the Aries point as the turning point of divine intent. The turning point of divine intent. I find that absolutely beautiful. And it also suggests to me that I have a very strong feeling with these rapidly changing energies that things could flip quite quickly, because when you have so much high frequency energy coming in to an area which has been up to now pretty low vibration, we've lived our lives principally in 3D, that although things can become chaotic and turbulent and unraveling, they can also flip. They can flip very quickly. So I am very optimistic for December and into the early months of next year. Another big upgrade, step up in March, I believe. The other important aspect to point out here is, and by the way, here this square between Jupiter and the new moon, the sun and moon, is action oriented. Squares are action. It's like the grit in the oyster. Something has to happen to produce something. beautiful, as it were. The sun and moon are conjunct a dwarf planet called Ixion at 2 degrees 35 of Capricorn. Now, again, Ixion I've mentioned before. Ixion, in its lower level of expression in myth, was known as the lawless brother of Pluto. He has no moral compass. He murdered his father-in-law and was kind of expelled from heaven by the other gods, but Zeus gave him a second chance, and he kind of wrecked that as well by trying to rape Zeus's wife, Hera. And at that point, he was spun off into eternity on a burning wheel. So this theme of no moral compass or repentance, I don't know if you feel that is manifesting in society at this time. You may do. However, at the higher level of expression, Ixion is another, I think, beautiful symbol for New Earth, because Ixion is about going your own way, very much finding your individual path, finding joy in simplicity and joy with your own bliss. Joy in your own bliss, in a simpler life, a joyful life. I think that's a really interesting symbol for New Earth too, because that's how I think it's going to manifest. And remember, New Earth isn't a place, it's a frequency. New Earth is already manifesting. It's manifesting in the groups that are emerging all over the world that I've talked about a lot. This is a global movement that will accelerate once Pluto starts to move into Aquarius, the sign of community collaboration, in March. But they are already there. Think of the People's Health Alliance, which is now global. Think of the People's Food and Farming Alliance, which is going to go global in different forms across different geographies. But the shift is from top down to grassroots up. And that is an unstoppable shift because it's astrological and it's repeated over the ages. I've gone back through the centuries, particularly looking at this shift from Pluto moving out of the end of Capricorn into Aquarius, and it has always been the pattern that Pluto, the planet of power, has shifted from whatever prevailing top-down structure was in force at the time, whether it was the Catholic Church or a dominating monarchy or strong government or whatever. It has always shifted as it moves into Aquarius towards the people. Now, it's going to take some time, because it only stays in Aquarius from March till June, shifts back into the final degrees of Capricorn, shifts much more fully into Aquarius in 2024, only a short dart back into Capricorn, September to November 2024, fully into Aquarius in December 24, for another 20 years till 2044. That, and for many of us, that will be the rest of our lifetimes. It will gather force, but it is already gathering force. We don't need to wait 10 years to see this organic grassroots up movement where people want to share, they want to come together in humanity, enjoy, support, help each other. That's New Earth. That's it. That's the beginning, the embryonic beginning of where we are headed. And it's thrilling. One other aspect I want to point out is that we have a semi-square 45-degree aspect between Jupiter at 0 of Aries and Uranus at 15 of Taurus. Now, these two planets have quite a lot in common, really. They are both about freedom. They're both about the future. They're about higher consciousness, breakthroughs. Uranus to higher consciousness, Jupiter, sudden breakthroughs. And I think that's what we're going to see for many people around this solstice time. And so with Jupiter in Aries, I'm going to stop sharing here, with Jupiter moving through Aries until next May, for all of us, think new beginnings, think courage, think bravery, think freedom, think sovereignty, think individuality, think independence. And remember that we are the co-creators, we are the co-producers, we are the co-participants. We're not just receiving all this astrological information, we are molding it. We are absolutely in these times the builders of New Earth, we're the pioneers of New Earth in a way that we have never been to such an extent in all of our lifetimes. And that's a social responsibility in terms of what are we broadcasting in our thinking and feeling 24/7, because that's forming the bricks and mortar and all the stonework and the foundation of New Earth. Everything we're broadcasting, we're emitting, and we're doing it all the time, whether we're aware of it or not. We can't stop broadcasting a frequency. But be aware and be very empowered in that. Keep shifting the compass needle. So if you feel that things are very hard right now, and I know for many people they are incredibly tough, just try and shift that compass needle a degree or so. Can you just take a few minutes out in your day? Can you think of, loving your child, loving your partner, loving your parents, loving your friends, hugging your dog, any tiny little chip, and kind of milk that, have gratitude for that love, that being joyful, that person or that being is in your life. Just shift the compass needle a little. And that very simple breath technique, just at home for free, just close your eyes. Just drop into your breath. Just drop into your breath. Observe the breath. 100% be with your breath. And just watch as the breath gradually slows, it deepens, and just do that for a few minutes. And if you can do that several times a day, even that starts to give you a stronger sense of center, of coming from your center rather than being buffeted from the outside. And it really helps you to shift your frequency to a more peaceful, loving place. And all of those tiny, tiny little shifts not only are helping you, but helping the collective. We are creating a new organic society. And these few months in particular are really crucial for laying the foundations. Now, it's always been said that 2032 was the beginning of the golden age. Apparently, we are doing well as a collective, and we're actually a little ahead of schedule. But we are going to see from next year, from this going over the end of the year, I believe, many more shoots of New Earth, many more expressions of how our new society is being built. And we are doing it. It's not being done for us. We have very helpful energy, raising of consciousness, and very helpful astrology right now to say, okay, here's your modeling clay. Make it beautiful. The other thing that's very important in this second half of December, don't forget, is that we have the third exact conjunction of the US Pluto return. Transiting Pluto coming exactly back to its so-called 1776 natal place. That happens on the 27th of December. But because this is such a massive 246, 248 year cycle, we are going to feel that whole process for the US for another couple of years at least. But this is the third exact conjunction. And as I've spoken before, this is a massive spiritual transformation for the US. This is a redefinition of the US, a restatement of its or complete upturning of its values, its economy, its politics, its legal system, its constitution, even its geography. What is the US going to be as we come out of this major Pluto return for the US? What is going to form versus what was there before? Was what was there before okay, or does it need reforming in a drastic way? That's going to be very exciting to watch, because whatever happens in the US, as I've said before, is going to ripple out to the rest of the world. And I think that is going to be quite fast moving. And I think it's going to be very instructive to watch in terms of how that reforms. So we are choosing our timeline. There are many, many timelines, and we are literally shifting our timeline every few seconds. But we can guarantee that we are on the highest timelines by just being in love. Not romantic love, but love as a state of being. Just feeling that you are emanating love through your days. And some some local relationships that I've had that were challenging have absolutely transformed from instead of kind of steaming about them to just broadcasting love to those people, and the dynamics have changed radically. And it's really, do it as an experiment with challenging relationships and see what happens. But in this crucible of change, trust the divine, trust the invisible, and know that we are absolutely on the ride of our lives towards a very different world that we are the co-creators of. So God bless. Powerhouse time for energy. Really make the most of it as far as you're able. Be in love, be in joy, be in peace, be in gratitude. Be with like-minded people. Try and do something special around the solstice. Think of setting that very clear, simple intention that you are already welcoming in an expanded consciousness, because that is for sure what is coming in right now and changing our world. So just like to thank you again for everything you've sent me. It's absolutely, it's been a tsunami of love. It has completely bowled me over. It's brought me to tears many times. So thank you, what we can accomplish as humanity. And I would also like to send all that love back, particularly if you celebrate this festive season. I wish you peace, I wish you joy, I wish you love in your world, and God bless. Thank you so much for listening. I'll be back soon looking at some of the major themes for 2023, which I think is going to be quite a different year energetically, and we are going to be in a very different place by the end of 2023 to where we are right now. God bless. Thank you so much for listening. Bye for now.